Welcome everyone, welcome to The Crowned Life, and today I am going to talk to you about the emotional body and the role that emotions play in pain, especially back pain. I'm going to talk a lot about that because I've got more hands-on experience with it, but I'm going to give you some tools for you to maybe do a little personal study if you want to. When this video finishes, you can look into it further, different parts of your body where you've experienced chronic pain. And you can maybe do a little bit of discovery on the emotional part of your body that you probably need to heal. Now, let me say that the reason I'm focusing a lot on the back in this video is because I had a recent back injury in August, about a month ago, and thankfully it wasn't as bad as it has been. I had a horrible back injury back in 2012, which took me about 6 weeks to fully recover from, with the help of a lot of painkillers and chiropractic visits. And then I finally, got out of it. But in both of those situations, nothing other than stress could be pinpointed as a cause because I hadn't really done anything to hurt myself. And so I'm kind of sharing this with you as well to think about, when we're talking about pain and trying to see if maybe there's a mind-body connection. This would be pain that likely has no other physical explanation other than emotional, right? Like if I throw my back out, but I wasn't lifting anything heavy, or nobody hit me, or, I wasn't in a car accident, or, you know what I'm saying? There's no physical explanation for the pain. Then that leads us to an emotional explanation. And so, some of you need to just kind of, make sure that these issues are not getting mixed up, physical causality versus emotional causality. This is involving non-traumatic instances of chronic pain. That's what we're talking about today. And it might be the result of something that is biological and psychological. Maybe psychological inner tension. And there's been a lot of studies, fortunately, that have demonstrated that having just simple awareness of this inner tension can help you to prevent pain and heal it. There is a doctor who's done a lot of research on this, and he's written about it as well. Dr. John Sarno has written a lot of books on the psychological origins of pain, and he really believes that this inner tension, what ends up happening is that it causes a biological impact where there's some kind of like mild oxygen deprivation caused by reduced blood flow to the muscles and nerves. And so that might explain why certain areas of the body are dealing with pain. They're not getting blood flow because of the tension that built up in that area. He says that a lot of self-motivated and successful people are prone to what he calls TMS, tension myositis syndrome. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, it has a lot to do with repressed, ignored, even unresolved emotions that end up causing you emotional pain. It's really that simple and really that powerful. All right, and speaking of emotional needs, my dog has now come here to let his needs be known. Let's see if I can show y'all. There he is. He's needy. Okay. So back to the topic at hand. Most of the time, I think that we're not even aware that we're repressing our emotions. I don't. Okay, it's not until I had this back injury that I'm like, wait a second. I remember, as a matter of fact, sitting down with my chiropractor back in 2012, and he's like, well, did you do this? Well, you do that? Well, how about this over here? We are trying to go down the list of what caused this massive back injury. And when we couldn't figure it out, he finally said, you need to go talk to somebody. This is stress. You have stress. And I had no clue. I mean, I knew that I was dealing with problems, but to me, that's been my whole life, right? So that's just life. There are problems in life, and you just roll with the punches, and that's all I've ever really known. And so I didn't understand that over time your body just won't put up with it anymore, and it can really debilitate you in a big way. All right, I'm back. I had to let my dog outside so he doesn't breathe all over this video. Y'all know y'all love hearing that, right? Okay, so back to the repressed emotions that we're not even realizing that we're doing it, because a lot of times I think in our minds we're just like, I got to go do this, right? I got to go to work, and and then you just put on your happy face at work so you don't get fired, so you can pay your bills, and you just stuff it, and it's just a way of life, right? And for some of us, it's not necessarily that we are controlling or hiding or ignoring our emotions. Like, we're fully aware of them. It's just that you might in your mind reason like, there's nothing I can do about this. And I've been at that point in my life where I've done all the thinking and processing and feeling that I can, but I'm like, well, the only way out of this is to get back to work and just keep hammering. And that might have become a very integral way of living. Either, some of you may be controlling, hiding, and ignoring the emotions. Others of you, you're not necessarily doing that. You can't fix it. So you just keep hammering through. Some people really, honestly, though, they don't realize that they have anxiety and repressed anger. And that can trigger muscle spasms. And I was reading in my research from Dr. Sarno that people can actually train themselves to experience back pain. It's like you train your body to put the stress, to carry it, to tighten up in your back. Like, again, going back to my chiropractor, I remember as we were talking one day, and I was sitting on his table, and he was looking at me after he'd given me an adjustment, which should have been great. I mean, because usually after they pop your back, there's endorphins running through you, right? And it's a great euphoric feeling. But within minutes, he noticed my back was already tightening up. He's like, look at you, look at your shoulders. They're already tightening up. And so we train our body to put this energy or this emotion into a particular area, because there's this built-in tendency to repress these unpleasant, painful, embarrassing emotions. And when we do this, then our bodies respond to the real and perceived threats that are making up our lives, even though maybe we're not even aware of it at all, that we're doing it. Because all of this is happening beneath the skin, beneath the surface, so to speak. And so while we're bottling up the emotions, what's happening is the nervous system is fighting. It's activating this fight or flight, freeze response, okay? And as a part of this, the oxygen in our blood supply is channeled to all the large organs needed to mount this defense against the threat. And so this is effectively draining energy away from, smaller muscles and nerves and tendons and ligaments. And that oxygen deprivation means that we're experiencing tension dysfunction and physical pain. In an odd way, this is the body forcing you to get distracted from whatever that is that's stressing you out and focus on dealing with the pain, okay? and get you to focus on working with this defense mechanism against our emotions bubbling to the surface. Because what happens when we feel this pain that rises up and forces us to deal with ourselves and our emotions, you know, it grabs your attention. And yeah, it can be very painful. It could be scary. It could be disabling. I mean, like I said, I had no clue until 2012 that, you know, stress could do that to my body. I mean, I couldn't even, I'm going to tell you how bad it was. I could not hold my arm down. Something was pinched in my shoulder blade, so that if I tried to bring my arm down like this, my nerve started shaking. My hand would start shaking like that, because there was some kind of nerve getting cut and some blood pressure or blood flow getting cut off, okay? And so like when I had to go to the chiropractor that time, I had to drive with my left hand on the steering wheel and the right hand like this. It's really weird, okay? But that's what I had to do to get down the road. And I was in excruciating pain. And I'm right-handed, so I could not write, I could not type. It was awful. It was awful. And to be at that level of pain to the point where you're disabled over stress, it forces you to say, wait a second, what is going on here? What caused it? If there's no physical explanation, I need to deal with my emotional body. And it's like, I've heard it explained this way. When this happens, it's almost like the mind has decided that physical pain is preferable to an emotional one. So people who have TMS, they tend to be conscientious perfectionists. I was raised by a perfectionist. Okay. So I've always got that voice in the back of my head. Like I can already hear and see what people are going to find wrong with what I'm doing. It's been an act of healing for me to just get stuff done and say, you know, C is better than an F because I was going for an A. Those of you who are perfectionists know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's also this need to excel, not just to achieve, but to excel and progress in life. These kind of people who experience this type of pain, you know, they often are very competitive, they're determined to get ahead, and they tend to be a lot more critical of themselves than others are of them. They work very hard, sometimes excessively. They might work as a form of escapism. I've done that. Like, I'm going to work my way out of this. I'm going to dig myself out of this hole. I can't fix this. I can't cry this out. I can't yell this out. So I'm going to go work this out. That's the mentality. They do tend to worry a lot, and they can be very compulsive and irritable. Again, the work can be compulsive. You know, they often have low self-esteem. They have deep-seated feelings of inferiority that they didn't work hard enough. They need to go back and work harder, that somebody's going to find fault, that they're not going to get something, that they're going to be denied, they're going to be rejected, you know, fill in the blank, okay? They often carry with them a strong, and some say overly developed, sense of responsibility, but they are often very accomplished people. So let's take a look at the emotional body map. I find this fascinating. I mean, I could study this thing for hours. You know, and those of you who are saying, I don't have back pain, but I have other kinds of pains, well, look at the map. This is going to give you a clue where this is coming from emotionally, what kind of emotional work the pain is signaling for you to do. Now, people who believe in this, they say that unconscious conflicts are often the reason why you're having this pain. It's the cause behind the internalization of your emotional pain. So, for example, let's say, you know, here's an example of an unconscious conflict. You hate your job, but you stay with it to survive. You won't quit. You won't leave the job. You stay there to survive because you got to pay your bills. You got to keep food on the table, roof over your head, maybe even your children, okay? Some of you, here's another one. You know your marriage is dead and over, but you stay to avoid loss. Or let's say you're single parenting. You've already, been through that. But it's draining you. Yet you continue rather than let your kids down. Or, who knows? It might not be, your own children. It could be an elderly parent, somebody that you're taking care of, and it's just draining. You don't have the support that you need to take on this task, but you can't just drop the ball because it's going to hurt other people, right? That's an unconscious conflict. Now, if we look closer at the map, we can see that back pain, for example, is believed by Dr. Sarno to be caused by the subconscious mind as an effort to keep you from thinking about or dealing with unpleasant and painful thoughts. Dr. Sarno explains, it's an interesting fact that the overwhelming majority of emotional and mental activity occurs below the level of consciousness. The human mind is something like an iceberg. The part that we are aware of, the conscious mind, represents a very small part of the total. It is in the subconscious mind that all of the complicated processing goes on. The condition begins and ends in the unconscious. Now, regarding pain in your neck, oh, I know y'all have had that in more ways than one, right? We all have. But a pain in your neck is an indication that you may be having trouble with forgiveness of yourself or even others. If you're feeling neck pain, consider the things you love about yourself and others and try to consciously work towards forgiveness. And just a reminder here, forgiveness is not about letting people off the hook for their wrongdoing. It's not about giving them a free pass and sweeping it under the rug and play pretend like everything's okay now. No. It's about letting yourself off of their hook, right? Not tending to that mess anymore, releasing it, letting it go. It's done and over with. You're not going to fuss and fool with it any further. Let's consider pain in shoulders, okay? And if you've ever had pain in your shoulders, that might indicate that you're dealing with a real emotional burden. And that's where the saying comes in, shouldering a problem. That's where it comes from. So focus on some proactive problem solving and distributing some of that burden to other people in your life if you can. I know, it's kind of like if you're in that single parenting situation that I mentioned before, or you're in that what do they call that, the sandwich generation, I think, where you're raising kids but you're also taking care of an elderly parent and you're bearing a burden that no one person alone is equipped to bear. My heart goes out to you because I've been through it, and I know it's like you need physically to drop the burden, but emotionally these people are depending on you, and you don't feel like you can. So try to find a way, maybe where there is no way, look into maybe alternatives if you can. Finally, pain in your upper back. If you're feeling pain in your upper back, you're probably coping with a lack of emotional support, and you might be feeling unloved, or you could even be holding back your own love. And if you're single, might be time for you to go out on a date and again just get in a very receptive mode, particularly the women. I talked about that in my last video. So if you want to know more about it and you missed the video, I'll have the link at the very end. But might be time to go out on a date. Might be a good time to have some good sex and release some tension. So in closing, there's a lot that we can do to stop the emotional body from depositing all this tension into our physical body. And if the suggestions I mentioned earlier don't help, maybe work on journaling. That might be a way to release and redirect that tension onto paper. Psychotherapy also, a lot of people say, is helpful. And another way you can improve things is by having an anti-inflammatory diet. I don't know, I might put out a video on that sometime. Let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in that kind of content. Also, getting better quality sleep. That's something else I could talk about in a future upcoming video if you're interested in that. And, you know, breathing techniques. I've heard a lot of people talk about breathing techniques. And some people are really big into it. You know, I'm not really well versed on it personally. I just know that if I get if I get in a really almost panicky situation, I will remind myself to take deep breaths and slow it down. Okay. And finally, movement, you know, doing exercise, maybe dancing if that's more your speed, or going out in nature, walking, because it's a way to physically exert any kind of aggression, but in a positive, constructive, healthy way. And try, if you can, to avoid or manage anxiety, limiting beliefs, social withdrawal. I mean, there's a time and a place for everything, right? I'm not saying to repress your feelings. If you're anxious about something, I mean, sit with it, feel it, but let it flow out of you. Don't hold on to it, right? And I know that's sometimes easier said than done, especially if you're dealing with a life situation that is just constantly hammering at you. It's not going away, you know, and you feel like things out of your control, you know, you're subject to. By the way, I have a video that might help you on that note called, you know, what to do when your life feels out of control. It's here on YouTube for free if you want to check it out. But again, also limiting beliefs. You know, sometimes part of that dealing with feeling out of control that is giving us the anxiety is coming from a place of feeling boxed in, like I don't have any other choice. And then you gotta find a way to reprogram your mind away from the limiting beliefs into the possibilities, what is possible, rather than focusing on what isn't possible. And then on the, you know, social withdrawal, sometimes, you know, being alone is actually healthy. I spend a lot of time alone, okay, but when it gets into isolation, we get into a dark zone, and you know, I'll be the first to admit that, you know, that's something I'm still having to work on. But along with this masculine and feminine energy, which I talked about in the last video, and so particularly if you're women and you're feeling like you have to bear burdens that you weren't designed to bear, you know, and you don't have the appropriate support in life that you need and deserve, and you feel like you're just going to collapse under the weight of it and the pressure, my God, make sure you look at my last video if you haven't seen it already on, you know, healing that divine feminine energy. And I'll put the links at the very end, so if you want to click on any of those and check them out. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from Dr. Wayne Dyer: when you change the way you look at your life, things you look at change. And I hope things change for the better with you. And I'm wishing you all the best. Be blessed.